Hey there, everyone! Welcome back to Speak English Podcast, the show that helps you improve your English in a fun and natural way. I'm Emmy.
And I'm Joe. If you've ever felt frustrated because you can understand English but struggle to speak it, then this episode is for you.
Yes, so many English learners tell me I can watch movies, I understand podcasts, and I can even read books in English. But when it's time to speak, my mind goes completely blank.
Oh, I hear that all the time. People say, I know the words in my head, but when I try to speak, I just freeze.
And trust me, I know exactly how that feels because I've been there. I used to think I was getting really good at English because I could understand almost everything. But when I had to actually talk to someone, it was a total disaster.
Yeah, it's like your brain knows what to say, but your mouth just refuses to cooperate.
Exactly. And it's not just a little frustration, it can make you feel really bad about yourself. Like, am I even learning? Why can I understand but not speak?
And the worst part, it can make you afraid to speak. You start avoiding conversations because you don't want to freeze up again.
Yes, that happened to me. I started doubting myself and thinking, maybe I'm just not good at languages. But the truth is this problem is completely normal. And the good news is, you can fix it.
That's why today, we're going to talk about why this happens and, more importantly, how to overcome it.
And I'll share my personal story, how I went from completely freezing in conversations to finally speaking with confidence.
Plus, we'll give you practical tips that you can start using today to improve your speaking skills.
So, if you're ready to break through that frustration and finally start speaking English with confidence, stay tuned.
Emmy, have you ever felt like you could understand a language but had trouble speaking?
Ooh, yes! And honestly, it made me feel so bad about myself.
Oh no, what happened?
Well, let me tell you a story. I had been learning English for years. I could watch movies without subtitles. I could read books. I even understood jokes and slang. I felt like I was doing great.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, until I actually had to speak. One day, I was at an event where everyone was speaking English. A woman came up to me, smiled, and said, "Hey, nice to meet you. So, where are you from?"
A simple question, right?
Yes, but at that moment, my brain just shut down. I could hear the words in my head. I knew the answer, but my mouth refused to move. I just stood there, staring at her, completely frozen.
Oh no, what did you do?
I panicked. I felt my face getting hot. My heart started racing, and I could feel everyone's eyes on me. I managed to whisper, I. And that was it. Nothing else came out.
That sounds so frustrating.
I was so embarrassed. The woman looked at me, waiting, and I could tell she was trying to be patient. But inside, I was screaming at myself, "Come on, Emmy! Say something! You know this."
Did you eventually say anything?
Barely. I forced out, from. And then she smiled kindly and said, "Oh, where are you from?" Trying to help me. And I finally managed to say, "I am from," but by that time, I was so nervous. I wanted to run away.
Wow, that must have been hard.
It was terrible. And after that, I felt so discouraged. I kept thinking, what's wrong with me? I understand everything, but I can't even answer a simple question.
So why does this happen? Why can people understand English but not speak it?
Well, after a lot of frustration, I finally figured it out. The problem is passive learning versus active learning.
Right, passive learning is when you receive information like watching videos, listening to podcasts, or reading books.
And don't get me wrong, passive learning is super important. It helps you understand English naturally, without memorizing rules like in school. But the problem is, it doesn't prepare you for real conversations.
Yeah, when you listen to a podcast or watch a movie, you don't have to think about forming sentences. You just recognize words and understand them.
Exactly. But when you're in a real conversation, you don't have the luxury of just listening. You have to and if you're not used to doing that, your brain just panics.
And I think another big reason is lack of muscle memory.
Oh yes! Speaking is a physical skill. Just like playing an instrument or a sport, your mouth and tongue need practice to form the words smoothly. If you only listen to English but never say the words out loud, your mouth isn't used to making those sounds.
That's why some people can read a word in English perfectly, but struggle to pronounce it in conversation.
Yes, I remember reading the word vegetable and thinking I knew how to say it. But when I finally said it out loud, I said V-GE-TA-BLE instead of VEG-TA-BLE, and it sounded so awkward.
I see this a lot with learners. They know a word visually, but they've never actually spoken it before.
And let's not forget the fear of making mistakes.
Oh, that's a huge one.
When I froze that day, part of it was because I wasn't used to speaking. But another big part was that I was so afraid of saying something wrong.
And when you're scared, your brain kind of shuts down, right?
Exactly. Instead of focusing on the conversation, I was thinking, what if I sound stupid? What if my grammar is wrong? What if they don't understand me?
That pressure makes it so much harder to speak.
Yes, and ironically, that fear prevents you from getting better, because the only way to improve speaking is by actually speaking mistakes and all.
Okay, so if someone is stuck like you were, what can they do to fix it?
There were a few really effective strategies that helped me, and I want to share them with you.
I love this tip. A lot of people think they need a conversation partner, but that's not true.
Yes, you don't need another person, you just need to use your voice. Even if you're alone, talk to yourself in English. Describe what you're doing. Talk about your day. Or pretend you're explaining something to a friend.
And this helps build confidence, right?
Absolutely. The more you hear yourself speaking English, the more natural it feels.
This is a big one. A lot of learners think in their native language first and then try to translate into English.
Yes, that's what slows you down. Because instead of focusing on the conversation, your brain is busy trying to convert words from one language to another.
And that takes too much time.
Exactly. The best way to stop translating is to start thinking directly in English.
How can someone practice that?
One way is to do mental narration. For example, if you're walking to work, instead of thinking je vais au travail and then translating it to I am going to work, just think I'm going to work in English from the beginning.
I love the shadowing technique. Can you explain how it works?
Of course. Shadowing is when you listen to a native speaker and repeat what they say immediately, copying their pronunciation and rhythm.
Like copying their speech in real time?
Yes, it's one of the best ways to train your mouth to speak smoothly. You can do this with YouTube videos, podcasts, or even movies. Just pick a sentence, pause, repeat it, and try to match the speaker's tone and speed.
A lot of people feel shy about this one, but it really works.
Yes, when I started recording myself, I noticed mistakes I didn't even realize I was making. It helps you see your weak points and improve them.
And over time, you get used to the sound of your own voice, so you feel less nervous in real conversations.
This one really helped me. Before I had a real conversation, I would imagine possible questions and practice answering them in my head.
Oh, like a rehearsal?
Exactly. If I knew I was going to a cafe, I would think, okay, what will the barista ask me? Probably, what would you like? And I'd practice my response. I'd like a cappuccino, please.
That's such a smart way to prepare.
Hey guys, it's Lily. Let's go over some keywords and phrases from today's episode. I'll explain them in simple terms so you can use them in your own conversations. Freeze. This means to suddenly stop moving or speaking because you're so nervous or shocked. For example, when I saw the exam question, I just froze. Go blank, when your mind suddenly forgets everything and you can't remember anything you were going to say or do. For example, I was ready to give my speech, but when I stood in front of everyone, my mind went completely blank. Discouraged. This means feeling like you can't do something anymore because it's too difficult. For example, I felt so discouraged after failing the test, but I didn't give up. Narration. This is when you describe something that's happening, like telling a story. For example, in the movie, the narrator gave a great narration of the character's journey. Active learning. This is when you're actively using a language or skill to practice, like speaking or writing. For example, if you want to improve your English, you need to focus on active learning, like speaking with a partner. Passive learning. This is when you're only listening, reading, or watching without practicing yourself. For example, watching English movies is a good way to learn passively, but it won't help you speak unless you practice too. Grammar. This refers to the rules and structure of a language. For example, English grammar rules can be tricky, but they're important for clear communication. Confidence. This means believing in yourself and feeling sure about your abilities. For example, after practicing every day, my confidence in speaking English grew a lot. Rehearse to practice something, especially before performing or saying it for real. For example, before the interview, I rehearsed my answers so I would feel more prepared. Pressure. This is when you feel stressed or anxious because you need to do something well or quickly. For example, I felt a lot of pressure to speak perfectly, but I had to remind myself that mistakes are okay. I hope this helps you with these words. Keep practicing and using them in your daily conversations. See you next time.
That's it for today's episode, folks. We hope you feel inspired to keep speaking English and keep improving.
Remember, you're not alone in this. Everyone feels nervous at first, but the more you practice, the easier it gets.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Speak English podcast.